You're doing what now?
We should have had a hearing for the budget at 8:15. That's what I was mentioning.
We'll just change the agenda.
Thank you. Thank you all.
And we changed.
Have a good day.
I'm gonna go ahead and talk to Dr.
I'm going.
See you, Doc.
Dr. Hatcher.
Just let her get out here.
Okay. It says on the agenda, the food established ordinance. I was told that I was to address this in terms of the position, the part-time position for the environmental service food certifier. In 1990, the current food establishment ordinance was approved. At that time, when restaurants were surveyed, they were surveyed under a 64-page pamphlet. In 2004, the state food ordinances were rewritten, and now there is a 120-page, 8.5 by 11 manual that each restaurant is surveyed under. The previous manual was basically addressing the floors, the ceilings, the walls, were they clean? It was a simple 15, 20-minute in and out survey. At that time, our ordinance established that each restaurant would be inspected 3 times per year. That's our county ordinance. In 2004, when the state ordinance was revised, it not only included all of those floors, ceilings, walls, is the plumbing not leaking or things clean, it began to look at, it required the person coming in and doing the inspection to look at how does food enter the restaurant? Is the truck refrigerated? Is the temperature accurate when it comes in? What are the temperatures in your refrigerators, your freezers? How is the food handled? How are the people who are preparing the food prepared? Is there a certified food handler on the premises? A thorough survey today takes, depending on the size of the restaurant or tavern being inspected, takes between 2 and 3 hours. And that's on site, and then you come back and you do the paperwork. So it has not been possible to do 3 surveys annually for all of our restaurants. Primarily, we're doing them right now for the problem restaurants. In 2008, we had Ben Gates look at the state ordinance to see how many times we're required by the state to do those inspections. And there actually is no written requirement. His interpretation was that 1 would be satisfactory. So we began to explore at the health board possible revision of our ordinance in order to allow us to do the thorough inspections, go back and do the repeats with the people who are the offenders, and look at revising our county ordinance so that we weren't crippled by this 3 times a year ordinance. And we have been in the process of doing that. The latest food model ordinance that came from the state was dated 2010. We have at the health board in a committee level revised, written a proposed new food ordinance for the county, and we are ready to send it to the county attorney to have them look at it before we bring it back to the health board to be approved, and then to you as a proposed ordinance for the county. So that's kind of the process that we've been going through. Now, in terms of the personnel in our office, and I'd like you to look at this in terms of the positions and not the personalities, and sometimes that's a little difficult to do. Currently, we have 2 environmental health specialists. One is Mr. Wagner, who is full-time and who does all of the environmental things, the wells, the septic tanks, the tattoo parlors, the various and sundry things that fall into that, the meth houses. And then we have a part-time food specialist, which is Mary Ann McCloskey. Mary Ann works between 20 and 24 hours a week doing the food inspections. There's been some concern about Mr. Wagner's position and the downturn in building and construction and the number of wells and septics that he's had to investigate or to approve, and concern about the number of down hours that he has. So I had both of them do time studies. Scott, in looking at his hours, does have between 7 and 17 hours a week of downtime. It varies. So on average, about 12 hours a week that are not spent doing anything other than answering the phone, helping answer the phones in the office, reading up on things that are changing in his field, trying to stay abreast of those kinds of things, covering the office at lunchtime, those kinds of things. So he has about half of the time available in that position to help out with restaurant inspections if needed when Marianne's gone, to follow up on restaurant complaints, that kind of thing. One thing you may not know that we are participating in as a local health department is a state initiative to begin accreditation of health departments. The State Department of Health is going through accreditation process right now, and they approached the CDC for some monies to help fund a project in District 3, which is what we are part of. We have been collaborating with Allen County, Noble County, Huntington County, Wells County, and Wabash County over the last almost a year, trying to look at the process of accreditation. The state is pushing for accreditation because they feel that national funding is going to be tied to accreditation status, and that the grants that come from the federal government to the state to support state projects are going to be dependent upon having accreditation. And they are looking forward to the same thing happening in counties, that if the county health department is not accredited, we will not be eligible for the same level of grant funding that we have had in the past.
What do you mean by accreditation?
Accreditation is a process by the National Public Health Board, which basically sets criteria for what you must provide in a health department in order to have an accreditation status. If you are familiar with Joint Commission accreditation status for hospitals, it sort of parallels that. Back in the 80s, the federal government said if you don't accredit your local hospital, if you don't become Joint Commission accredited, we may not pay you Medicare funds. It sort of parallels that.
So it's basically an approval from the federal government that you're all right.
Well, yes and no, because the federal government recognizes the Public Health Board accreditation status as a, yes, this is a good health department. They do all the things that public health departments should do, and they do them at the level that we expect that they should. The Public Health Accreditation Board is not a federal agency. It is a national agency that is independent, just like the Joint Commission is a national agency which is independent of Medicare.
But the federal government then accepts that as...
Correct. They look at that as, okay, I don't have to come in and inspect you personally because somebody else that we recognize as an authority in the field has already done that.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
That's okay, that's fine. Anyway, we have been working on this, and as we've done it, there are a number of deficiencies that we have in our health department, policies and procedures that we don't have, processes that we don't do, quality improvement projects that we don't do. We don't have any formal public health needs assessment, and we don't have a plan to address those needs. So those are things that are projects that have to be undertaken before you can actually invite an accreditation board in to look over what you do. And I had already sort of tapped Scott because he has some free time to do a large portion of this. And he and I have been attending meetings with this district group to look at what we need to do. And we've gotten some grant monies. We received our first two receivables in the amount of $2,000 and $1,500 for some of the work that we've done. The total grant over the next year should bring us up to $16,000 if we are able to meet all of those deliverables. However, if you take away my part-time person for doing restaurant inspections, and that all falls on Scott, he's not going to have adequate time to do it alone based on the time studies that I have them do. And then secondly, I won't have anybody to help me with this accreditation project. So I'm here to ask you to please not take away my half-time environmental specialist for food safety. This is a time in food safety where we get calls from the state police about a refrigerated truck that's been stopped because their temperatures aren't accurate. And so then Marianne has to go out on the highway and take temperatures of the food, and if indeed they're not right, then she has to manage the disposal of all of that. We get food recalls. Just a few weeks ago, she had to go out to all of the food markets. We have 40 of them in the county, and make sure that they all were aware that cantaloupes grown from the Chamberlain farms were removed from the shelves. And then secondly, she had to go back and get all Indiana-grown cantaloupes off of the shelves because of listeria and a salmonella outbreak associated with those cantaloupes. So it's not just the restaurant inspections. There's a lot of peripheral things involved. We have 82 restaurants in the county at the current time. We have 14 taverns. We have 11 schools. We have 7 fraternal orders. We have 25 mobile services throughout the year. All of those require inspections. And anytime, and I wasn't aware of this until just a few years ago, anytime a deli mart or a restaurant changes hands, that's considered a brand new facility, and a new inspection has to be done. So it's not just, can we get into each restaurant every year and do a thorough inspection? There's a lot more involved in that. I'm amazed that she can get it done in 20 to 24 hours a week. I'll try to answer questions if you have any. But one other thing, I do have a concern about vesting all of the environmental health in a single position, because if something happens to that person, they decide to leave, they are ill and can't do the job, then there's no backup. And finding somebody who is equipped to do the whole scope of those services would be somewhat difficult.
Any other questions for Dr.
Well, it's getting ready, but are you still fine with the once-a-year inspection of these places?
I think that as long as they are not changing hands and not identified as problem facilities. And the ordinance, any good ordinance, the current ordinance and the revised ordinance both state that, if there are problems with the facility, an inspection can be done at any time. Currently, we have 7 problem restaurants in the county that we go back to frequently.
Keep eye on it.
More than 3 times a year. Yeah.
But you don't have a problem with the good ones that once a year?
No.
Okay.
If there's a restaurant who's been inspected and everything is up to par, their restaurant is good, and you see that annually, year after year, they don't know when you're coming. These are not really announced visits. Then I have no problem.
I was just
with that.
curious how you personally felt about it.
Quite frankly, I think that we do a pretty good job in this county. We have had some complaints about restaurants. We do have a process for that, and we investigate those when we get a complaint.
Okay, good.
I only have one concern. This reminds me of when FEMA was started, when our emergency management was started. Remember how it started this way, and then in order to get these grants, we had to do this, this, and this. And then before you know it, we're really not doing much for Whitley County anymore, but we're working for these grant funds. And then we're spending all the money that we're receiving from the federal government has to be spent on this, 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 and this. And now we have shelves and shelves and shelves of stuff that we'll never use. That's my only hope, that the health department can remain focused on Whitley County residents. And the grant money's nice, but sometimes it's just not applicable.
That is one nice thing about these grants, is that they have no stipulations on how they're to be spent, or even when they can be held. And my hope is that we can hold them for the accreditation fees at the time we're ready to go for accreditation, because they're substantial. Even for a county our size, we're looking at probably $40,000 over 5 years for accreditation.
Any other questions or comments?
Yeah, I just got one. What other benefits are there being accredited other than being?
Of them not being cut out of
Yeah.
grant monies that are available. Well, it does meet a standard, a national standard. You can compare yourself to your neighbor across the county or across states even, because the same national standards apply from state to state, from county to county. And so you can say, yes, I'm doing the best job possible, or no, I'm not meeting the standards.
I have a question. This is, John, to you. Since this is an ordinance, I would like to have the commissioners' input into this.
Well, we're not talking
Actually,
about
I've-
emergency right now, are we?
We're talking about.
We,
Budget.
right,
Yeah.
your concern was the budget, I believe, but the ordinance revision ultimately has to come back to you. Don Amber, I discussed it with him, since he's my commissioner for my department.
And they are gonna initiate some type of ordinance for
We
approval?
have worked in a committee from the health board on a revised food ordinance to bring it more up to date. And it's been passed through the committee of the health department, the health board. And the next step, after I talked to Don, was to send it to the attorney to make sure it was all in the proper format, met all of the particular standards that have to be met for an ordinance. And then bring it back to the health board, because the health board has to approve it, and then it comes to you to actually be made law. That was my understanding of the process.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're gonna have Mark Sturdivant present some figures on changing of lights, and then we're gonna take a break. And then after that, we're gonna reconvene and open public hearing on the Whitley County budget.